Putting out a false distress signal. It's a trick used by space pirates.
So, Sally, what can you remember about Time Squad?
Well, Time Squad was also a good episode for me in many ways. I think it develops our relationship in some ways. But let me start at the beginning of it because that was where I was wearing that very tight pink outfit,
Very
which
pink jeans
is
and
extremely hard to move around in, and it was too tight. It was ridiculous. And they kept doing these shots of me climbing in and bum shots and all of that, and I just thought they were really sort of egging up the whole slightly sexy thing. At the beginning, I'm teaching Blake how to fly the ship, which that's exactly what I should have been doing. I'm firm, I'm strong, I know what I'm doing, and I've got a certain command which I really think should have developed with Jenna. Of course, that disappears again as time goes on. And when we go off, I think we're going off to Saurian Major, isn't it?
That's right.
Which is the nerve center of the Federation. We want to destroy that. And then we see this projectile, or at least I see a projectile, which I realize is something, I can't remember whether it's me or Blake decides we've got to go and find out what it is. I think actually probably Blake decides, doesn't he?
The two of you together, you're keen to go with him.
Maybe it's the two of us together, yeah. And we go and find it. And of course then it sort of starts developing our relationship, I think. Well, we're squeezed into this tiny capsule together. And I remember it being so cramped and indeed extremely hot. Very quickly we realize, well, we know that there's these frozen men in there and it's in suspension and there must be a crew and all of that. But I think very soon we realize that we're running out of air, don't we? And the teleport can't get us back. So we're left knowing that we might die together. And there's an intimacy that develops between us, I think, which is sort of, it was great. I remember loving doing that episode. And, we're even holding hands at one point. I don't know if you realize that. We get quite breathless, and it was very easy to work with him in that episode. I mean, Gareth and I worked well together, I think, in that episode. And then, of course, I'm left there. I can't remember what happens. Is it they bring the Liberator up to on side, and then everybody sort of goes back into the Liberator, but I'm left in the capsule, I think. Is that right? I think I'm...
You go in there the capsule a few times for reasons.
I do.
You're deciding to defrost the aliens.
That's right. And there's an awful lot of me squeezing out of the capsule and squeezing in again. And this is where my trousers split.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I don't know how I managed to keep going. I don't know. I cannot remember now, but I know they split because they were ridiculous trousers, and I was trying to get in and out of that tiny space, and then I was doing all the fights with these aliens, and so I don't know how we managed to repair that. I have absolutely no memory of it, but I do remember it being very difficult both to act and keep my front camera, because at one point the trousers were split and we didn't have a second pair. So how did I do it? I don't know. It goes into the ether, but it wasn't very helpful. And I've got all that extra hair still, which looks absolutely terrible in my view. I hated that. and then I have all the and there was endless shots of my backside going into the Liberator. I thought, oh, for God's sake, not another one. Anyway, and then as a result of that, I don't know whether it's what actually sort of stimulates this idea, but I consider leaving the Liberator, don't I? At some point, I go back onto the Liberator, and I'm having a chat with Gan, who's telling me about how he killed the security guard who was after his woman, and I'm considering leaving, but then I don't because I go back into the capsule. But I wonder what was that, her trying to be more independent, more of an intergalactic space pirate, or had she developed a relationship with Blake at that point and then decided not to go any I don't know. It was a funny little moment.
You know you are free to leave, and yet you stay anyway.
Exactly, and that's where I feel the writing, you know, I don't feel I was much of an intergalactic space pirate there. I become quite girly and sort of, you know, I could have threatened to leave more and shown my feistiness more there at that point, I think.
You didn't go off and kill an alien or two.
Exactly, yeah. I do go off and, actually, I do go off and kill an alien. You're right.
Two aliens.
I do kill 2 aliens. You know it better than I do. Of course you do. I throw some guy, I can't remember what I did. I rush for the door. Oh, that's right. I rush for the door with one guy and I bite his arm off. Yes, that's right. I seem to remember enjoying that. And I remember it was quite a difficult scene to do because the door was not heavy. It was very, very light. And we were trying to do a lot of heavy acting with the door and the biting and this guy pushing. But then I become incredibly wet about my arm. I mean, I sort of come back and say, oh, I've been hurt with this tiny little bruise on my arm. And, you know, an intergalactic space pirate wouldn't do that. She'd be much more stoical. And then I suddenly get cured by this miraculous thing that Gan puts on my arm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, all of that is a little bit weak in some sense for my character. And then Blake calls in, and I obviously want to tell him suddenly, but they say, oh no, everything's under control. But I just think I could have been much more forceful. I start off the episode quite commanding, and I become a little less commanding in that sense.
Is this you lie to Blake about everything's fine?
Jenna?
Blake. Anything happened with the crew of the projectile?
One of them... They're recovering. Everything's under control.
Yes, exactly.
But in the same way that he'd lied to you the episode before when he'd been down at the planet.
Well, it actually got you down there onto the surface of Cygnus.
What do you think this is, moon dust?
Did you see anything while you were down there?
Not much.
You're both actually lying. It's actually a parallel lie to each other.
Oh, that's interesting. Yes. Oh, well done. Yes. Yeah. You're right. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, Time Squad. I mean, you are the star of Time Squad. It's your episode. It's named for your section, and a lot of it's actually very highly suspenseful with dark and lightings, and being hunted through the Liberator. In terms of rehearsal and in terms of the lighting of those things, is a lot of that just done on the studio floor? You go the best you can.
Yeah, I mean, that would never happen none of that was done in the rehearsal room. You just got it on the night, in the night that you were actually recording it. So it was done on the studio floor. And I had sort of prep in terms of, I remember the stuntman showing me how to hold the gun properly, as if I was a double shooter with the double hands and backing off and walking backwards and learning how to do that. But, you had to improvise when it was actually on the studio floor. And, the lighting would be different. Everything would be totally different when you actually got into the studio, and you just had to go with it. It's very hard to remember now, the little moment. It would have been lovely to rehearse a bit and then do it, rehearse it and then do it. But of course that never happened. And those fights I had with the guys, I mean, they were okay, but I can't remember how we did those. But I think I'm lying on the floor and I throw somebody over my head, don't I?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I think so. And then I end up in a fetal position in the teleport. I think we would have probably had one go at that. And if it worked, it worked. And sometimes they worked and sometimes they looked good and sometimes they looked a bit clunky. I can't remember whether that one looked particularly good.
Time Squad had particular issues with timing too, because of the main prop that you had to use, that shuttle. They had a lot of trouble moving it into studio because
Oh, did they?
yeah, they had to, in the end they had to saw off the wings because it was
Oh,
too
really?
large. The union people wouldn't transport it because it was too large. So they had to saw off the wings and then move it and then put the wings back up again. And so you actually lost about a half a day with just trying to get that.
Well, that was always happening. You know, some of the special effects were going wrong, or things exploding at the wrong time, taking up time, or exactly what you've just described of the capsule. I mean, and of course, they weren't taking into consideration there was me in those silly boots and the tight trousers having to climb up all the time and climb down and get into tiny spaces. And there was no time to practice that. You just had to do it.
Yeah, and you wouldn't even see the
And
prop beforehand.
well, oh God, no! It wasn't in the rehearsal room. It was just sort of imagined, you know, because the prop wouldn't have been in the rehearsal room, so you only saw it on the day. And I didn't know, and probably, as you say, they'd been wasting half a day trying to get it in, so that meant we had less time to do our scenes with it. I mean, everything was all about, you've only got 5 minutes to do this scene. You've got to do it in one take. You've got to do it now. You must do it before 10 o'clock. Otherwise, we're into overtime. So we were always, my heart was always beating because we were always doing scenes against the clock. And if you forgot a line or you didn't get something right, you would be, you know, in trouble.
trouble.
Really. You had to get it done.
I spoke to Roger Murray Leach, the designer of The Liberator and this
Yeah.
episode as well. And he actually said he really hated the show in many ways because it was so stressful. And
Well, it was enormously stressful for everybody concerned. I mean, you know, for him as a designer, because of the small budgets and having to sort of make things look great when he didn't have the money to make things or the time to make things. And for us, likewise. I mean, I remember those 2 years being very stressful. And I, of course, internalized it and thought a lot of it was to do with my inexperience. Well, actually, I look at it now and I didn't look that inexperienced.
but you
I
don't
sort of
remember
got
at all.
away. I sort of got away with it. That is acting. But I wasn't a relaxed actor. If I could go back and do all that now, I would have said, you know, I need time to do this scene. Give me time. You know, you'd have had more, all these powers that be were looking over you. And I was so young and it was a very male dominated world. And you just had to do what you were told, which is why I became such a feminist, to just stand up to these powers that be. And now I feel very free and easy to say what I feel and want wherever I'm filming or wherever I'm being directed, and to say, no, I need time to do this because I'm the one on screen.
Yeah.
You're the one who's going to get judged by the public.